friend introduced me to Wendy Mata, and she told me that Wendy was super cool, making incredible candles and other tools to help you call in abundance, heal different parts of you, love. And they were very, very powerful, spelled, very intentional, beautiful. And I was like, okay, that's really cool. She connected the two of us, and she and I hopped on a call together. And I just really loved her energy. She's very cool. She comes from a super corporate background and actually just left her career recently to start a business, Bruja Power Botanica. And it was just so cool to learn more about her heritage, the life that she had before, because Wendy was working 20 years in technology and actually was in cybersecurity before embracing and I don't really want to say embracing. I think she's always embraced it, but kind of made it her full-time thing as a Bruja Curandera. I mean, she has lineage in this. She's 5 generations of her family has practiced shamanic healing, sorcery, and she is actually also an initiated Mayan shaman. And she's been teaching workshops for a long time, but now she's really kind of stepped into this new phase in her career with Bruja Power Botanica through the community, in her company, and through the candles and other magical things that she creates. So I hope you love this episode as much as I did. It was so interesting to learn about all the different places that she's been to, the things that she's done, and what is she currently creating. Hello, Wendy. I am so excited to welcome you to the podcast, everyone. Wendy is a 5th-generation Bruja Curandera by lineage, and she's initiated shaman. She has a wonderful shop that has amazing candles. She has a great online community, and I'm excited to talk to her today about her Saturn return and her business and the spiritual practices she incorporates in her everyday life and in her business to really help her thrive and find success. Wendy, welcome, welcome. Please give a quick introduction of yourself as well.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here. Well, yes, my name is Wendy Mata, and I'm a Bruja Curandera by lineage, an initiated shaman in the Aztec tradition and Mayan tradition. I am from Mexico, although I've been living all over the world for quite a while. I left Mexico in my 20s. And since I was in my 20s, I took the task and the mission and the responsibility of walking the path of magic. I used to work in the corporate world in technology development for over 20 years. I recently retired to be witching full time, but I did technology for 20 years. I am the founder of an online botanica, which is called Bruja Power Botanica, where we offer handcrafted products for magic and spell work to support the ones that are going through any kind of challenges or simply are just looking to increase their magic. And you can check it out at bruja.us.
Amazing. Okay, so for people who don't know what Bruja Curandera means, can you explain?
Absolutely. So bruja, that's a great point. Bruja means witch in English. So that's how colonizers from Spain started calling the magical women from Mexico. I actually went through a lot of internal dialogue about connecting or not into the label of bruja because of the colonization connotation.
Yes.
I have native blood. My grandmother was Toltec, but I also have Spanish blood because her husband was Spanish and he was Spanish British. So when I was going through all this, should I use bruja or not? Do I feel okay with bruja or not? I realized that as many Mexicans or most Mexicans, or all Mexicans, and anybody really in Latin America. I'm mestiza. I carry the blood from the native people in my country, but I also carry the blood of other cultures. So I adopted Bruja, and now it's my label. It's the way that I refer myself to. And curandera means healer. It's There is shamanism in Mexico, yes, but it's more called curanderismo, which is really healing the mind, healing the spirit, using plants, using energy, and also using specific frequencies from the universe that we use to help people have a better life.
And have you always identified with being a bruja and curandera, at least kind of what those things entail? I know that with the word bruja, you're kind of back and forth about it, but is this something that it's always been with you, from very young age, or is this something more recent that you really embraced this side of you?
It's always been there. I come from a long lineage of witchy women. We can trace up to 5 generations the magical women in our family, as well as the magical men in our family. So it's always been there. There has always been a healer or a witch or a shaman in our family. So it's not something new. And I always use that because I have always been different, as in a way that I was raised as a witch. I was raised as a magical person. As I was raised talking about astral traveling with my father. I was raised talking about plants with my aunt, or talking about spiritual things with my mother. So it's not a new thing. Although I always identify with it, I call myself more a curandera and a shaman for a really long time. And then I really embraced the witchiness about 5 years ago.
Amazing, amazing. And so you've grown up with this. How did you find yourself in the corporate world and working in technology? Why did you not pursue something in like the healing arts, in wellness?
Because I always wanted to travel the world. And I come from a small town in Mexico called Reynosa. It's a really small city. And it was surrounded by manufacturing companies. And one of the ways of being able to see the world was by working on the manufacturing companies and hoping that I will get the kind of job that will take me to traveling. So it was more a matter of not necessarily wanting to be on manufacturing or in technology development. I just wanted to see the world. And that seemed like a way to do it. So I started in technology development really young, right before I was, I think, in my second semester of college when I started working. And I was assigned to a unit that was doing technology development for in the automotive industry at that time. And because I was bilingual and there was not a lot of people that was bilingual working there, they assigned me to this team that was doing new product introduction in different facilities. So I started traveling. At 19, and I've been at this point in, I don't know how many countries, maybe 35, 40, I'm not sure. But my driver was that. So I thought, yes, I can do magic and I can use magic into helping in my career. But what I really want to do, what I really desire, is to see the world, which was just the beginning of a life of traveling.
Yes, and that makes a lot of sense. As I looked into your astrology, your 10th house of career is in Sagittarius, and Sagittarius is the sign of international travel. It's the teacher, it's the student, always thinking, always reimagining things. And so with it being in your 10th house, it's like how you made money by travel.
Right. Yes.
Yes.
Interesting. I didn't know that. I learned something new today.
Yes, and now you're entering kind of the second phase of your career, and it's about being the student, but it's also being the teacher and teaching all these people to tap into their intuitive gifts. So, I mean, you know this, but very much so doing all the things that you should be doing and that your heart and soul is calling out for.
And that's exactly what I'm doing right now. Actually, I have an online community. We're almost 100 people now, where we go through a process of rediscovering skills and intuition and the clairs, and or personal magic. And then I offer, it's called Mujer Luna International Coven. And I offer structures and blueprints for women and self-identifying women to really discover their magic. So it makes a lot of sense what you're
I
saying.
mean, it's so necessary. We are all magical. We are all intuitive. We are all psychic, especially women. And we have really forgotten that. But I feel like it's been a strong movement the last few years, especially during the pandemic when, things were quiet. You're able to think. You have the mental spaciousness and physical spaciousness to really think about what you wanted. But then that's when your intuition comes through.
Absolutely. And it also life took me to this place. I did work traveling and creating projects and organizing a lot of processes for multinationals and multi-global companies. But I was always finding myself surrounded by people that wanted to talk to me about their witchy side. I talked about the witchy side of CEOs, CFOs, founders of multi-billion dollar companies around the world. And our conversations usually started talking about technology, but they always ended about their spirituality. And I continue to have relationships with them. They continue to be my friends. They continue to be people that I talk with. But it's now about their spiritual path. So I realized that life, little by little, started taking me out of what I was doing. I did enjoy it, and I am very grateful for my career, but my soul and my heart were craving being able to facilitate the space for others, for them to rediscover their magic.
I love that. I love that. And I think this is a good segue to talk about your Saturn return. So your Saturn is in Virgo. And I imagine that in your late 20s, you probably came into your power in terms of manufacturing technology, where you were able to see things very clearly, maybe modernizing things, increasing efficiency. Like basically people came to you to get things done and to get things done efficiently, and also getting things done very well. But that might have also been a stressor too. I feel like with your Saturn return, and I'd love to hear, what you went through in your late 20s was difficult, but it was almost like rising to the occasion of just moving ahead in the current space and the current role that you're in. So what was happening during that time? What were you doing? Where were you?
On my late 20s, I was working on developing technology projects for cybersecurity. I had a really high profile job for a company that was acquired by Cisco back in 2013, I think. But on my late 20s, I was responsible for setting up the processes and manufacturing centers for that company. So it was a very stressful job, and it was a very high profile job. And I had to do a lot of multi-million dollar negotiations and assessments and audits for suppliers. But I was also really lucky that I was very connected to my intuition. So somehow, besides the preparation that I had and the experience that I had and the mentors, my intuition always told me what to do. My intuition always told me this is the right vendor, this is the wrong vendor, this is the right project, this is the wrong project. This is the country where we should be exploring manufacturing. This is not the country where we should be exploring manufacturing. So I always use my gifts to help me on the projects that were assigned to me. They really didn't understand how things were done so quickly when I took over some of the projects. But it was really because my intuition was one of my main guidances on my actions. And I did so the way that I used to be, and I still do it nowadays, although it's in a completely different field. But my intuition will tell me what to do, but then I will use data analysis to really confirm what my intuition was telling me. Because if you're responsible of multi-million dollar projects, you have to also use the logic, right? You don't just go with your intuition. You also have to check the data, read the data, and take decisions based on data. So,
Yeah. And so what were some of the more difficult things that you experienced in your late 20s?
Well, on my late 20s, it wasn't necessarily work related, but it was more in my life. It's actually when I moved to the United States. I went from Mexico to Finland. I used to work for Nokia in the plastics and mechanics design area. And I used to manage the European suppliers for Nokia. But then in my late 20s, I moved to the Washington, D.C. area. And I think the hardest part of my Saturn return at that point was really readapting again to the Americas.
Yeah.
Scandinavian countries and Finland, like they are a very gender neutral space. They are they encourage the power and the strength of a woman. They are very liberating. So I went from Mexico to a space that was very freeing for me as a strong woman. And I kind of reclaimed my power and I reclaimed my individuality. And I broke some ties that I had still with the religion that my family used to practice. And I became like more me. But then I had to come back to the Americas and I came back into the structures that exist in the US that are very patriarchal. So I went from freeing myself and feeling like I was in the right place to coming to the US and feeling back like I was being put in a box. Also, when I came to the US, I started experiencing racism, which is not something that I went through in Europe. In the area where I was in Finland, people was very accepting of me. But then I came to the US and I started experiencing things that I never had before. Some of them very painful just because I have an accent or because my hair is black and not, blonde. So it was really a having to love humanity again in a way and accepting that is a very different structure than what I was really enjoying in Scandinavia.
And what really helped you through this process? Because with your Saturn and Virgo, it's yes, it's a time when you're working very hard for work, but there's also the ability to see all areas of your life that need improvements or areas that you're like, oh, I don't really like how this is going. And so that's what you just shared personally. But what really helped you kind of assimilate, or rather, I don't like using that word actually, not assimilate, but kind of just finding your footing in American culture in the DC area as you were going through a big evolution of self?
I think being a student, I enrolled myself in a lot of classes that had to do with spirituality. I went back to Mexico and I completed my shamanic initiations. I started tapping more back into the skills and gifts that were gifted to me by my family, but that I was only using for work. I mean, for life too, right? For manifesting better salaries and trips and peace. But I started exploring more my spirituality. And it's really when I made the commitment to change my life so that eventually my spirituality and my witchiness and my magic um, were what I will be doing full time.
Okay, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Was there anything that surprised you during that time? Something that you learned about your heritage or culture or your intuition, your psychic abilities that really came through?
I think that what surprised me the most is how easy it is to change reality. The deeper that you go into your spiritual practices and the deeper you connect into your power and your magic and your intuition, the faster you can alter your surroundings. But that also comes with a lot of responsibility. Being able to change reality comes with knowing that you have to be very careful with how you act. You have to be very careful with how you conduct yourself. You have to be very careful with your ethical system. You have to be very careful with always remaining authentic, because if you're not authentic, then you disconnect from your power. And also, you have to be very careful that you really pay attention, like pay attention to the messages, pay attention to the voice of spirit, pay attention to the symbologies. Um, so I really realized that life is just, it's gonna sound funny, but it's like a game. Like we really just change
Oh,
our
yeah,
reality, right?
totally.
We really just change
Totally.
reality. We bend our reality in any way based on how much we tap into our power, but also with great power comes great responsibility. So we really cannot just go there and try to change reality without thinking in how it's going to affect everybody else around us. We have to be very careful in how we walk the path so that we don't really cause any ripple effects in anybody's lives.
Okay. And so you did 20 years working in technology. And then how did you make the leap? When did you feel that it was right for you to transition into the work that you do now with Bruja Power Botanica and the online community and everything that you're doing now?
I left my job January 29 of 2021. So this happened this year. I started teaching shamanism and spiritual practices years ago, but I was only doing that because my soul was calling me to do it and people was asking for it, but it was not something that I was doing full time. But then back in 2020, I really had to think about the future. I really had to think about how I was living my life and what kind of examples I was living to my daughter. And more than anything, I was also seeing that humanity was going through such as a deep change. And there was the need to creating support systems for humanity. And I feel that responsibility because the knowledge was gifted to me by my family, and I believe that when the wisdom is given to you, you have the responsibility of helping humanity. All those gifts and this magic and this power is not just given to us to have a better life, but it is also given to us for the greater good. So it's really not about us, it's really about the world. And I was seeing how the structures were changing, how people was changing, how the dream that we were living at in that world where things were somehow functioning, but then everything crumbled because life changed, right?
Mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
in the need of that. And I took the decision that it was time. So I did a series of things and rituals, and I had a plan. Um, and I also had a series of indicators of this is how much money I have to create before I leave my job, so that I am not just jumping into moving from my six-figure salary to nothing, because that seems pretty irresponsible, especially as a mother, right? I have the responsibility of my daughter. So I had a plan, and also life was asking for it. Like the signs were huge. It wasn't just a whisper, but it was huge. And
Mm.
you know that you're ready when everything around you really conspires to make your reality, to support your reality.
Tell me
Um,
more about the signs that you saw and what you saw, what you felt that really supported the shift.
well, I was meant to teach a retreat back in 2020. The retreat was called Reclaiming the Bruja Power, which translates to reclaiming the witch magic that lives within you. I created this retreat. My retreat sold out within 24 hours. Then we added 10 additional spots and they sold out within hours. So I had this retreat that was going to be 18 people, and it was going to be in March of 2020. And in this retreat, the plan was that I was going to be teaching some of the tools of brujeria. So I went ahead and I bought things to teach people how to make spellcasted candles, things to teach people how to create magical oils, things to teach people how to use their crystals. Like I went and I bought all the ingredients and items that I was going to use for the retreat. But suddenly the pandemic hit and I had to cancel the retreat and I had to return the money of 18 people. I lost some of the money that I already had paid for the rentals. Like it was pretty harsh. So as a way of somehow just recovering some of what I lost, it wasn't really a loss, but I at that time saw it like a loss.
It's
I
funny how
started
that is,
creating.
right?
Exactly. So I started creating the products that are now in the Botanica. I started creating things and I posted them on my Facebook. And as soon as I was posting them on my Facebook, within a day, things were getting sold out. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like, I really never planned on selling magical candles on my Facebook, but people are buying them. So somebody asked me, why don't you put an online store? Because I am not local to you and I would love it if you ship some things to me. So I did that and I opened a Shopify store and everything that I was posting on my Shopify store started selling out. And then I will fill it again and it will sell out again. And then I will fill it again and it will sell out again.
Your
And
store's always sold out. Everything's always sold out.
Yes. Yeah, it's been over a year now of that and it continues to get sold out. Every time that I replenish stock, it gets sold out right away.
What is your favorite product right now? Your favorite candle?
My favorite candle is always the one that does ancestral veneration. It's called Ancestral Magic. And I created that candle thinking of my grandmother, who was one of my teachers and it continues to be my guide now that she's on the other side. And I created that candle channeling her. I was thinking on a candle that will honor grandmother energy and ancestry energy. And I talked to her the entire process. I asked her what earths she wanted on the candle. I asked her what kind of energies she wanted me to wave on the candle. I asked her what kind of vessel and color and everything. And I created that candle that helps people venerate and connect into their own ancestry. And in our spiritual practices in Mexico, in curanderismo, in shamanism, and brujeria, the ancestral veneration, the connection to our ancestors and our lineage is one of the most powerful gifts that we have because we recognize that we continue to be supported and connected by our ancestors, with our ancestors, our entire life. We're not alone, right? We are whoever came before us. That's who we are. We're also ourselves, but we're also our past. So my favorite candle is the one that does that. Is the one that honors our ancestry.
Ah, I love that. I feel like I definitely need that candle now.
I've heard a lot of testimonials of people when they use the ancestral magic candle, how their ancestors start showing up. Like they start feeling them, they start smelling them, they start dreaming them because it opens a portal for that communication.
Yes. And then they all come in. They're like, oh, we're welcome. Let's all like go talk to her.
I even have emails. People are like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed because they all came at once.
Okay, so
yeah, that's because they were trying to communicate with you for a long time and you finally open yourself to listen.
Yeah. So would you say your daily spiritual practice incorporates some sort of ancestral connection, connecting to your grandmother, other people within your lineage? Like, what is your spiritual practice like on a daily basis?
Well, as a mother and business owner and someone that always has a lot going on, it varies by the day. Like I don't really have a practice that is a daily practice besides what I do with my daughter at the end of the day. In the morning, I have a small ceremony of gratitude that I do with the universe. Sometimes it's 3 seconds and sometimes it's 10 minutes. It depends on what's going on because I have a 4-year-old. But at the end of the day, with my daughter, we always cast a clearing circle for her energy so that when she goes to bed, her energy is cleared. And I always cast a circle of clearing for myself so that my energy is also clear before bed. And we also cast a circle of protection. And in the circle of protection, it's for protecting her and protecting our family. And it's a circle that is sustained by our ancestry. It's sustained by angels, archangels, and all the light beings that we work with. So that when she goes into the realm of dreams, she is protected. So she doesn't come back fragmented from the dream worlds. And children sometimes have very strange sleeping patterns, right? But my daughter, I've always done clearing for her. I've always done protection for her. So she sleeps great. She sleeps great all night.
Yeah, people don't realize that children are very sensitive between this world and the spiritual world. And so they see more things, they feel more things, and they're much more susceptible. So it's incredible that you are doing this for your daughter every single day. And I hope it inspires people who have children and who are getting into, spirituality and tapping into their intuition and psychic abilities to remember that their children are probably experiencing it at the same time that they are.
And in an even stronger way, right? Because they were just back at source, they were just back at the universe not that long ago.
Yeah.
They come feeling it even stronger. So yes, definitely to open the path for the children and to have our own spiritual practices so that our children can learn through the example, kind of like I did with my parents. And then the other thing that I do is I cast love circles for our family so that we can continue to be as happy as we are and even more. And I also do exercises of abundance, but those exercises of abundance are not an everyday life thing. It's more a when I'm ready because I work a lot with the energy flow. Like I'm not on all
Yes.
the time, I'm not resting all the time. So I have my times of making money. I have my times of creating relaxation. I have my times of caretaking. I have my times of teaching. I have my times of learning. So when I'm on my space of generating abundance, then I do my specific rituals for abundance, and lots of abundance comes. Or when I am on my space of learning, then I go in silence as much as I can and I listen to whatever spirit has to say. Or when I'm on my space of teaching, then I call my students. Like, I mean, we do have a little bit of marketing, but we really don't have a lot of marketing yet. We have a lot of customers. We have a really big business because I put the call. Like I go and do universe. This is what I have to share today, or the next month, or the next couple of months. Please bring the ones that are needing that frequency that I have to share, and I do a series of exercises and rituals, and they show up like always. Or if I'm looking to learn something, then I call for the teachers, I call for the mentors, I call for the guides that will bring that wisdom.
And something that people always ask me is like, well, how do I access my intuition? Like, what does it sound like? I think even at those like really just beginning stages of awareness, like we're talking about like, casting spells and protection circles, but so many people are just like, but how do I access my intuition? And then all those other things, like, what does that mean? Like, how do I tap into that? How do I do those things? And I know that you have that in your online community, but what advice do you have for people who are just like, I don't even know what intuition sounds like?
That's a great question, and a great point to talk about. So intuition is really the voice of your soul. We have the body, right? And the body is just the sacred temple of our soul. But we really are not our body. Although our body is beautiful and it's light, but our body is not real. It is real, but it's not real. What is real is the essence that lives inside of us. And that essence communicates in a very subtle way, and it communicates as intuition. So intuition is really the name of the language that our essence uses to communicate. And it's kind of like an internal GPS. It tells us where to go, where not to go, what people is good for us, what people is not good for us, what learnings are good for us, what learnings are not good for us. So it's a GPS that we all have. And then that GPS translates the communication system based on something called clairs, which is the types of ways that we do an interpretation for that information. And depending on your clair is kind of like your superpower. This means, do you see the information from spirit in your dreams? Do you see the information from spirit because you hear it? Do you see the information from spirit because you see it? Do you see the information from spirit or your soul because you taste it? Do you see the information because you feel it? Like there's many ways, right, that we perceive information
Mm-hmm,
that
mm-hmm.
is connected to our senses. So that is the clairs. So the intuition really is the voice of our internal GPS, and then the clairs are the ways that that GPS is translating the energy or the information.
I'd love to know what you learned in this episode. And if you're going through a Saturn return, what support do you need? And what has it been like for you? Has it been kind of like a bit of a soul wrenching experience and you kind of having so many existential questions? Or have you been coasting through it because you've already been on your path, which big kudos to you? Now, these episodes about Saturn return aren't just for people who are going through their Saturn return, which happens in your late 20s, mid to late 50s, as well as mid to late 80s. It's really a source of inspiration for people who are trying to just make a change in their lives, wanting to do something different, but afraid of taking the leap. I know that for myself, whenever I'm going through a big transition, it's so helpful to hear the stories of other people because I'm like, they made it through, I can make it through as well. And they also have wonderful tips and tricks of kind of like, what do they do to kind of get through this kind of rocky time? So I hope that it's been inspirational to you. And if you think that someone would benefit from this episode, share it with them. And if you haven't rated the podcast 5 stars, I would be so appreciative if you rated it 5 stars. And if you feel compelled to make a donation, you can find that in the show notes as well. Your support means so much to me. If you're interested in spirituality and how that helps with building a business and figuring out your career, don't miss the next episode that's dropping same time next week. All right, have a wonderful day. And as always, I am wishing you so much joy and so much abundance in your life.